I love character customization. I'll often find myself spending 30 minutes to an hour just making a character for my game. Giving the player that freedom to decide what they can look like while playing really helps make the game more engaging. Of course, not all games should have that, especially more linear games where the main character plays a big role in the story. But for the games that do have it, it really makes the experience a whole lot more enjoyable for many players. A great example of this would be in Skate 3, one of my all-time favorite games. Skate 3 came out 10 years ago, all the way back in 2011. Yet its character customization is probably one of the best out of all games to include one. It didn't have that many hairstyles and it wasn't extremely detailed, but it worked for what it was. You were able to change pretty much anything about your character, including sliders for things like jaw shape and nose size. As you progress through the game, you unlock more people in your crew, as well as more clothing and gear, rewarding you with the opportunity to customize separate characters. I spent a large chunk of the game just doing that, and it really helped the game feel more enjoyable. There's a large variety of games that have their own form of character customization, which is something that I can really appreciate. Even a game like Dark Souls has one, and it doesn't feel lazily put together at all, despite you not being able to see any part of your character if you want more armor or even some basic clothing. Another game that handles customization really well is The Sims 4. It makes sense for The Sims to have a good character editor because of the game it is, being a sandbox game, and they definitely deliver. When I like to make characters, I usually model them after real people or characters from other video games, and I haven't found a game that makes it easier than The Sims 4. Pretty much every aspect of your character can be adjusted, allowing each player to have their own unique character, and the choices when it comes to hairstyles and clothing are pretty large, not limiting what you can wear as much as other games might. A big complaint that I have with some of these games is that they feel like they're only there to be there, giving off the illusion that the game is big and detailed. Some games have a character customization menu that's very clearly lazily put together with not much care put into it. A huge culprit of this is Cyberpunk 2077. Ignoring all the other problems that game has, the customization is a huge disappointment. I remember imagining a detailed character editor when I considered buying the game on release, mostly due to the announcement that you could customize your genitals, which was obviously a gimmick to get people more excited for the game, but it really did show promise. It made me think that they were really putting care into giving the player freedom in their appearance. But as we all know, that was another lie along with the long list of broken promises CD Projekt Red told us. I mean, the customization is still there, and you definitely can customize your genitals, but what could have been something extremely fun and cool ended up being a huge disappointment. Most options had a few preset choices, and it didn't really feel like you were given much of a choice when it came to your character. There weren't even any sliders to adjust small things. A game that came out 9 years before it had a much more detailed system, and that just shows how little care and polish went into the game. Cyberpunk isn't the only example of this, and there are a lot of games that include shallow character editors. There's tons of games that add it in as a feature and putting little to no care into it, and when it happens, it just feels like a gimmick to get people excited, and honestly, I'd prefer if those games just didn't include one at all. Examples of this could be Fallout 4 and Sunset Overdrive. While both are good games, the options when it comes to creating your characters are severely limited, and it really doesn't feel like you're given much of a choice, which defeats the point of having it in the first place. To clarify, these games don't have terrible character creators, it's just that they're surprisingly limited for when they came out, especially considering that the skate games all had more complex ones over several years before. Not only that, but the character editors don't have any value past the start of the game, whereas in the skate games and The Sims, it pushes the game forward and it's an important gameplay element throughout your playthrough. While the editors for these games are still pretty good, they're disappointing because of the missed opportunities they failed to achieve. There are some great examples of games doing it right, but they all have their own limitations, mostly in the preset things like clothing or hairstyles. While games like The Sims and Skate have a good amount of variety, it still feels pretty limited. At least with the way I make my characters, there's always a hairstyle or article of clothing I have in mind that I can't find, usually leading me to settling with something similar but not quite what I'm looking for. There's so many opportunities and variety when the player is given the chance to create their own character, so it's frustrating when you have to settle for something worse than what you had in mind. Although, it's hard to criticize these games, as most of the games that have gotten this right came out many years ago, and not many new games give you the choice. But it would be great to see more variety in these things in some future titles, such as Skate 4 or even The Sims 5 if that ever comes out in the near future. So many games come out each year, and occasionally one with a character creator, giving me hope for something to satisfy me, but each year I find myself disappointed, and in some cases I'd rather have no editor than a shallow one. This isn't a huge issue, and it's definitely not the deciding factor on whether or not I play a game, but it really does make a difference, and overall immerses the player further into the virtual reality the game creates.